Hey, how's it going? It's Keith Townsend from the CTO Advisor. We're here live-ish from ONS, the Open Networking Summit, and I'm joined with John Zanos from Inocybe.
Correct.
And weird name, from your colleague Madison, I was learning that your CEO was kind of like in a hacker group as a kid.
Absolutely.
And he loved the name. And so he kept it on. I thought it was a really cool retro throwback.
Yeah, it's, goes back to mushrooms, wisdom, and early days.
So the CTO Advisor is mainly a enterprise-focused podcast, and I'm an enterprise guy. So help draw a picture between, like, why is a conference like ONS? I saw AWS on stage this morning at the keynote, but help paint the picture. Why is ONS, open networking in general, important to the enterprise?
Yeah. So it first starts with the reality that networking is important to everybody.
Right.
Carriers, enterprises, consumers, right? Our smartphone into a database, into Amazon, to an AT&T network, for example. What we're also finding is that the advent of IoT, right, is everybody's starting to connect things. GE, financial services. So while we always have talked about networking being important to the service provider space, it's becoming more and more important to enterprises. For us, we're seeing interest in financial services, retail, companies that focus on satellites, and the other part is the disaggregation of the network. Right? So now people are looking at what we accomplished in compute with open source and disaggregation and automation and bringing that to the network. That's what we're really all talking about while we're here today.
So IoT, obviously a huge complex problem for the enterprise. I was surprised Dr. Cooper from AWS IoT was on stage this morning. She talked about how IoT kind of inverts the relationship of the traditional internet, where before, it was more of a broadcast medium. Now we have this machine-to-machine challenge and IoT and management headaches. And I think Inocybe focuses on day-two management challenges of networking. What does Inocybe do exactly?
Our focus is helping companies consume open source in a networking context. So we recognize two things. First, from the switch up, how do you incorporate open source? Secondly, we're not just open source focused, we're more importantly use case focused. So are you trying to manage traffic? Are you trying to do service function chain? And we start with that discussion, and then we help build a software stack that is focused on accomplishing those goals. Building from the open source networking projects that we're talking about here that are under this Linux Foundation networking umbrella. But what we've found is a lot of enterprises, a lot of tier 2 service providers aren't trying to solve the big problems. They're trying to solve specific use cases, and therefore we take away the unnecessary packages, help them build a software stack, and more importantly, help them manage and upgrade it so it actually solves the problem they're attacking. So one very common use case we're seeing in tier 2 service providers, we're seeing in financial services, we're seeing in retail is traffic engineering. Not NFVI and all the complexity, but help me route traffic, help me optimize traffic. And that's a great spot for us to work with them and take away the unnecessary complexity. So we're really trying to simplify the consumption and utilization of open source and networking use cases.
So I was talking to Dell EMC yesterday about their ONI projects and products, open networking switching, and one of the challenges that we have in the enterprise is consuming open source in general. And networking is not known for an area that we consume open source with open arms. But there was a lot of appeals to the conversation I had with Dell EMC yesterday. One, the ability to take top-of-rack switches, install just the services I want on them, and then I can have east-west traffic not leave that whole access layer, and then that puts less burden on my core switches. It enables me, one, to reduce risk when it comes to upgrading core switches. It allows me to extend the life of those things, and it makes virtualization management much simpler. But if I'm a traditional enterprise guy, I'm a little weary of open source software, especially at the switch level, top of rack switch level. How do you guys help solve that problem?
So we're actually doing some interesting work with Dell and the Open Switch Foundation, which is part of this Linux Foundation effort. Specifically, we've taken OpenSwitch and created an open NAS, right, network operating system, focused to work with Open Daylight as an open controller. So what we're doing is packaging and simplifying the very problem you're pointing at for enterprises. They're like, you know, am I confident enough that a white box switch with an open source NAS, with an open source controller will work, right? And we say actually we love disaggregation because you have to disaggregate stuff and then you're going to aggregate it back together. And that's what we're doing with Dell. So we're demonstrating a white box switch with an open source NAS being managed by an Open Daylight controller. And what we're going to do is aggregate that together so that for an enterprise, it looks and feels very comfortable. It's not all this, am I getting a whole bunch of Lego pieces that almost kind of fit together? There are 3 simple Lego pieces. We're putting them together and demonstrating to the marketplace that they work well together. The important thing for enterprises, you're getting the benefits of open source, so scalability, flexibility, innovation, cost effectiveness, no vendor lock-in, but with some of the comfort you're used to from buying and consuming switches from the major providers. So we're kind of crossing that bridge and getting enterprises more comfortable. And this goes to what we're really focused on. We're not trying to solve this problem holistically. We're picking narrow use cases like white box switches and open source NASs, or narrow use cases like traffic engineering, and using those as introduction points for open source in the network, and making it pretty simple, safe, and real familiar for the enterprises that have those sort of network needs.
So John, if people want to find out more about Inocybe, that's a tough name.
Yeah,
it takes a little
lot
while,
of history
like
to it,
but it's a tough name, Inocybe. Where can they find out more information?
So we're on LinkedIn. So Inocybe, I-N-O-C-Y-B-E. You can find us at our website, www.inocybe.com. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're accessible if you're following the Linux Foundation. We've been part of a number of press releases while we're here at ONS. The Day NAS press release we were part of that AT&T Linux Foundation talked about in terms of open source switches. We're active in the Open Daylight, the ONAP community, lots of acronyms. But come to our website, come to our LinkedIn page. We're happy to talk to you.
All right, and if you didn't understand any of that, ODL, Open Daylight, blah, 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 you know what? Come to thectoadvisor.com. We talk about this stuff all the time, helping to translate some of the open source projects into practical terms that enterprises can consume, similar to Inocybe, use and put to use, take advantage of. Other than that, you can find me on the web, thectoadvisor.com. You can find this in iTunes, YouTube, LinkedIn, and of course the website ctodose.com. Talk to you next, CTO Dose.